Okay, let's set the scene. Imagine this. It's March 8th, 2026. We are 9 days into a massive military conflict with Iran, and the data that's starting to roll in, well, it's painting a really startling picture.
First up, we've got a number straight from CENTCOM. And get this, it's 90%. That is the massive drop in Iranian missile attacks just since day one of the fighting. I mean, a 90% decline. That's a staggering collapse, and it points to an absolutely catastrophic failure of what was supposed to be their biggest weapon.
Okay, next number. Look at the price of oil. We're talking Brent crude here. It has just blown past $100 a barrel. We haven't seen that in almost 4 years, and you better believe it's sending some serious shockwaves through the entire global economy.
And, last but not least, the number 1. What does that stand for? Well, that's the number of supreme leaders of Iran taken out in a daylight airstrike. Think about that for a second. A complete decapitation of the regime. Just wow. Okay, so how on earth did all this happen? Let's dive in.
Right. So the big question is, how did we get here? I mean, how does a conflict of this magnitude go from being just a possibility to something that military planners started seeing as, well, basically inevitable?
Well, the analysis we're looking at points to this perfect storm of 3 major threats all coming together at once. First, Iran hit the nuclear threshold. We're talking enough enriched uranium for something like 10 devices. Second, their whole proxy network, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, it was at the absolute peak of its power. And third, their control over the Strait of Hormuz, it basically gave them a chokehold on over 20% of the world's seaborne oil. You put those 3 things together, and for planners in the US and Israel, that just became a risk they were not willing to tolerate.
So this strategic thinking didn't just stay on a whiteboard. It got formalized into actual U.S. policy. It's called National Security Presidential Memorandum 2, or NSPM 2. When it was signed back in February 2025, it wasn't just another piece of paper. No, this was the real deal. It laid the legal and strategic groundwork that explicitly authorized military action to neutralize Iran's nuclear program and its regional aggression.
And then, a whole series of events lined up, creating what the administration saw as the perfect window of opportunity to act. You had the fall of Assad in Syria, which was huge because it severed Iran's land bridge to Hezbollah. At the same time, a year-long operation called Rough Rider was busy taking out Houthi missile stockpiles. And then the final piece fell into place. The nuclear talks in Geneva completely collapsed. That gave them the political cover they needed. So you see, the proxy network was weaker. The official policy was on the books. The moment had arrived.
So, with that strategic window wide open, what did the US and its allies actually manage to do on the ground? Let's look at the military scorecard for just those first 9 days. And honestly, the impact was just devastating for Iran. Their main nuclear sites at Fordow and Natanz hit hard. That alone pushed their timeline to get a bomb back by years. Then you have the leadership, the supreme leader himself, and 3 top IRGC commanders, all killed. And their missile capability? Functionally gone. We're talking something like 75% of their launchers eliminated. Their whole proxy network was left in tatters, completely fragmented.
But it wasn't a completely one-sided fight. Iran did have some successes. They managed to inflict US casualties over in Kuwait, and they landed a really big symbolic blow by hitting the huge Al Udeid airbase in Qatar with ballistic missiles. But here's the crucial part. They pulled off a major strategic win by effectively shutting down the Strait of Hormuz. And maybe most importantly, despite that massive decapitation strike, the regime itself actually survived. They even managed to appoint the late leader's son to take over.
So you've got to ask, how? How did they survive a strike like that? The answer is this fascinating doctrine they have called mosaic defense. Just picture it, 31 different autonomous military commands spread across the country. Each one has pre-delegated authority to just keep on fighting, no matter what they hear from Tehran. The whole system is literally designed to make the regime unkillable, to withstand exactly this kind of decapitation strike.
Now, what's really interesting here is the paradox at the heart of this whole strategy. Its greatest strength, being so decentralized, is also its greatest weakness. Sure, it means you can't wipe out the regime with one clean shot, but that same decentralization makes it almost impossible for them to pull off complex, coordinated attacks. So you see, it's a doctrine built purely for survival. It was never designed for victory.
Okay, let's zoom in on what was, without a doubt, Iran's biggest success, and that was weaponizing the world's oil supply. How? By shutting down the single most important energy choke point on the planet, the Strait of Hormuz.
And the way they did it is just genius in a way. They didn't need a huge navy or a bunch of mines. They did it with insurance premiums. Seriously, All it took was a few small-scale attacks on commercial ships. That created enough perceived risk that the big global insurers just started pulling their war risk coverage. The ones that stuck around? They jacked up their premiums by over 1,000%. All of a sudden, it just became economically irrational to send a ship through there. The market itself created a blockade, not the military.
And the economic fallout from that? It was immediate and it was dramatic. You can see it right here. The price of oil just skyrocketed. It went from about $72 a barrel before the conflict to over $106 just 9 days in. And the scary part, analysts were projecting it could hit $150 if that strait stayed closed.
But here's something that's absolutely crucial to get. This economic pain, it was not shared equally at all, not even close. For countries that have to import their energy, think China, Japan, a lot of Europe, this was a massive, massive economic shock. But for the United States, as a net energy exporter, higher oil prices are actually, well, they're an economic benefit, a totally asymmetric situation.
So let's recap where we are. Iran's military is basically crippled. But the regime is still standing, and it has managed to weaponize the global economy. So what's the one thing? The one decisive variable that's going to determine how this whole thing ends.
To answer that, the analysis actually turns to political science, which tells us there are usually 3 conditions for an authoritarian regime to collapse. So let's see where Iran stands. First, elite fracture. Is the leadership turning on itself? Nope, not met. In fact, the hardliners have actually tightened their grip. Second, mass mobilization. Big street protests? Well, we know it can happen in Iran, but for now, the war has suppressed that. But then there's the third one, economic collapse. And that condition, it's not just met, it's in an advanced state and getting worse, fast.
And all of this leads us to the central takeaway of the entire analysis. It's this: no amount of external military force, bombs, strikes, you name it, can guarantee the final outcome all by itself. The air campaign can kick the door open, it can create an opportunity for change, but whether or not anyone actually walks through that door, that depends completely on what's happening inside Iran.
Which really leaves us with the one fundamental strategic question that's at the heart of this whole thing. And you could argue it's at the heart of so much of modern foreign policy. And the question is this: can you really use external pressure, no matter how intense, to force a country to change from within?
And the source material we're looking at leaves us on this really powerful final thought. It basically says, look, military force is great at blowing things up. It can destroy armies, navies, buildings, but there is a permanent structural limit to what it can ever achieve as a tool for political change. And that's the big question mark that hangs over this conflict as it moves past day 9 and into an uncertain future.